What's up, guys? It's Coach Grant with First Down Training, and today we're going to be breaking down 8 different wide receiver press releases, when to use them against each specific coverage, and then the technique behind each one so you can execute each one of these releases to perfection. So I hope this video helps you guys out. I hope it teaches you a few new things off the line against press. But also, fellas, we are going to be traveling out to 15 more states this year for 2-day-long QB and wide receiver training camp. So next up on our camp tour, we're going to be coming out to San Francisco, Orlando, Florida, New Orleans, Charlotte, Dallas, the DMV area, St. Louis, Honolulu, Hawaii, Boston, Cleveland, Austin, Texas, Seattle, Newark, Denver, and finishing it off in Los Angeles, California. So fellas, if you're local to one of those states, would like to get some working with us for 2 whole days, we separate everybody by age group. We'll have DBs out there for one-on-ones on both days. Check out that very first link below. We'd love to have you out for some great work this off season. Let's get started. So now, first release we're covering here is going to be this slide and go release here from Davante Adams. So Davante Adams is one of the best at this release, and I think this is one of the things that every wide receiver should know how to do, and that's pair your releases together. So when we hit this DB with this kind of hezzy slide and we just take off, I like to use this on a fade route best. You could really use it on pretty much anything, I would say, but the fade route is where it works the best, and when we have an inside shade press coverage DB. So normally when you do this like kind of slide release where you slide to the outside, what route do you normally see from a receiver? You normally see a slant. So, and DBs know that as well. DBs are taught that, especially when this slide release got real popular, this like hezzy skip to the outside. DB coaches were all over it saying, oh, well, anytime you see a wide receiver slide to the outside, expect a slant. He wouldn't slide to the outside if he wasn't trying to move you off the platform to run a slant. Now, what an intelligent wide receiver would do is they would pair their releases together. So how many times have you seen Davante Adams hit this slide and then use like a crossover and run a slant? And he gets this DB to bite bad. You see it over and over and over again. So a smart DB is going to be expecting that. But as a smart wide receiver, I need to know how to pair those releases together. So that's what I would do. So let's say we have a fade route called, and I know I'm going to be seeing this inside shade look. I come up to the line, I see his inside shade. Okay, I'm automatically thinking, how can I make this look similar to other things that I do? So he comes off the ball, he gives this little slide move. So when that DB sits to the inside, we got him. If I change up the tempo and I slide to the outside, get him to settle, I could go from 0 to 100. And honest to God, when you have a quarterback who could put the ball out there, all you need is a step or two on this DB to be able to win, and you just have to keep that head down and push up vertical. You could run a comeback off of this. You could run an out route. If you restack, you could run a post route or a dig, but I personally like it the best on a fade when we have that inside shade coverage. So what's the technique behind this release? How do I actually execute this release? So you need some kind of a step, whether that's with your front foot, whether that's with your back foot, to generate some like balance and explosion off the line. So you see how Adams, when he goes, you see how he takes that like kind of step with his back foot, right? There are a lot of people would call this a false step. That is not a false step. That like kind of, I call it a kick step. That kick step is a way to just kind of give you some balance and help you explode to the outside and get some kind of like twitch to your movement. You can't come off this release and do this like hezzy move flat-footed. You can't be in a stance flat-footed and then try to just hop to the outside. It's not going to work. You're not going to have enough twitch to the release to be able to get open. You need something to generate explosion. Now, some guys will kick a little bit further behind, and we're going to see that in these next 2 clips. And now some guys will take that front foot and take a step and push off of that. Any one of those is fine. Just make sure that we get some quickness to it. Let's play this again full speed. So first release is that slide and go release. We like it the best on a fade route versus inside shade press. Okay, so now this next release, I call it a slide and react release. Some people would just call it a basic slide release. I call it a slide and react release, but it builds off of exactly what we just saw. So this is Amari Cooper, same type of press coverage look that we saw. So we got inside shade, maybe about a yard or 2 off, and we're gonna be running a fade. But this is where everybody asks about that slide release. Okay, well, what if I try to do that slide and go, but instead this DB doesn't sit to the inside, he jumps to the outside? That's where this slide react release comes into play. So let's watch this full speed. So this is Amari Cooper doing the slide. DB jumps, and he's able to just take the inside release. And you see the amount of separation that he's able to get. QB put this over the top. I think if the QB settles him down in that window, that is no problem whatsoever. Now, there was a lot of criticism on this route because that guy from Last Chance U made a video on this, that head coach. If you guys aren't familiar with that show, it's okay. But a coach was pretty much talking about it, saying that Cooper should have taken an outside release on this. Now, Now, that may be true if it was a must outside release play, but if it's not a must outside release, and what that means is no matter what the coverage is from this DB, you got to take the outside release. If it's not a must outside release, I think this is fine. I don't think there's any difference between taking an inside release or an outside release on a fade, as long as you're able to restack and be in a window for the QB. So I want to clear that up first, because I know some of you probably saw that. So let's talk about this release. So watch what he does with his back foot to generate some explosion. He takes that kick step, same thing that Davante Adams was doing, and he hesitates to the outside. Now, if this DB sits to the inside, tries to stay patient, we could just take it. We could just go run the fade. But now that I'm doing this slide reaction release, when I slide to the outside and this DB jumps to the outside as well, I got to be ready to just put the brakes on. This is not a part of the release. This is just a reaction. A lot of times, fellas, people overcomplicate press releases. It's about doing things that are simple, but being able to react. You come up to the line, you have a plan with maybe about 5 or 6 different things. Okay, I'm ready to react. If he takes this away, I got a plan for it, and I'm able to react like taking this inside release. I think in this case, personally, I don't think this is an MOR, which is must outside release, because of how close he is to the sideline. I think if he forces this outside release, that DB will put him right to that sideline, and he'll have no space for the QB. I think if it was an MOR, his split would be a little bit more cut down to give him room to the outside. But again, you don't know what the play necessarily was called. This could be Cooper's fault, but that's the goal of his release right there, was to get a reaction. If he sits to the inside and expects that slide release, okay, fine, I go fade. If he jumps to the outside, fine, I put the brakes on, I'm still going fade. Let's play this thing again, full speed one more time. Great job by Cooper using that kick step to generate some quickness and being able to react. Just maybe put that ball right in that whole shot from that QB. Okay, so now, this next release I call a slide diamond release. So this is a release that you got to understand you only want to use it when it's a longer developing slant. So maybe it's an RPO. RPO is best for this. Like when the quarterback's maybe doing a zone fake back here, he's reading this linebacker crashes, we have this slant. And he's putting that ball right where that linebacker needs to be. But that's a longer developing play, right? The quarterback has to do a full play action fake before he throws the ball. So that's when I would use this. But this builds off of exactly what we just talked about, that slide and go release. So we got inside shade press. That is when I would use this release. And we're going to get to outside shade press and head up press in a second and some releases you can use for that. But I want to make sure I cover this first. So let's play this full speed. So Lamb hesitates 1, 2, 3 and attacks the outside shoulder of the DB. That is as textbook as it gets with this release. Because now maybe this DB's seen it before. Maybe we've hit him with the slide and go. Maybe I've hit him with some kind of just like speed release fade. Whatever. Maybe he's anxious to play the fade. Or maybe I come out with this type of release. Because maybe he's seen it on film. He knows that I like to slide and take off and go. This is why, fellas, you only need about 5 to 6 different releases that all can build. Because when that DB it can't predict what we're doing, it is very, very tough to stop us. So Lamb, he does this slide to the outside, DB staying patient, and then what does he do? He accelerates to the outside. He takes these 3 steps, slide, 1, 2, 3. Now, they weren't the longest strides in the world, but he's still attacking the outside shoulder. He still has some quickness to it, and that is what can get that DB to open up that gate and think fade. So that's the technique on this, fellas. It's the same tempo on the slide. Instead of just running a fade, you're pretty much running a fade for 3 steps, and you put the brakes on that 3rd step right here and drive back underneath. That is a slide diamond release. We like this best against inside shade press. So watch what he does. Watch what Lamb does with his feet. You see how he takes a step with that front foot? I call that a prep step. So the last 2 examples we showed a kick step. This is the same type of thing. He takes a prep step with that front foot. That's to generate some explosion, get him to a good base, get him some balance. And then when he slides and comes to balance, slide left, right, left. And that left, right, left goes right at the outside shoulder. DB can flip, and we can accelerate on that slant. Just know, fellas, it's a longer developing release, so we have to make sure we use it in the right scenario. RPO, 3-step drop from gun from the quarterback, or 5-step drop under center. But if it's a quick game slant, you got to go with something quicker. And trust me, at the end of this video, we are going to get to that release that you would want to use. Let's play this thing again, full speed one more time. Great job by CeeDee Lamb being patient, taking those 3 steps to that outside shoulder, and winning on that slant. All right, so now we're going to talk about probably my favorite release to use against head-up press. So when you get head-up press, a lot of it is like that slide release in terms of reaction. So you kind of want to react to the leverage that the DB gives you. So let's play this full speed. Jefferson's going to be using something we call a split release. So split release is exactly how it sounds. Pretty much splitting your feet, trying to react to the DB, and Justin Jefferson does this a lot. So I got a DB, he's head up. He's got a nice wide base. He's not showing a particular leverage. Like he's not shaded to the inside or shaded to the outside. Like I said, we're going to talk about outside shade press here in a second. But let's go over this first. So when he's head up press, we don't necessarily know what leverage he's trying to keep, right? We don't know where he's trying to force. We don't know where his help is, maybe. Maybe we do based on like, the safeties who we're reading. But like, let's say if he was lined up inside shade right away and Jefferson's running a dig route, we already know that we're probably going to attack him inside and take the outside release. We're not going to try to force the inside release against inside shade press, because when a DB's lined up inside shade, we know his goal is to prevent the inside release. We talk about this all the time on this page. Does not want to give up the inside release because that's his responsibility. His help is outside and the sideline is outside. That's his help. So same thing if the DB was outside shade and you had to run like a dig. If he's outside shade, we know that he has probably safety help to the inside. So we wouldn't want to just take off and run because that would force him right into the safety help. You'd want to attack him and then push up vertical so the QB has a window. So with a split release, you can kind of get a read on the DB and react based on how he plays. So on the split release, he splits, and we see that the DB shades inside. Jair Alexander shades inside. Okay, fine. I know I'm not going to be able to drive off of my left foot and take the inside release. I'm going to take the outside release. And I'm completely fine with that because at the top of the route, we also need to have a plan. Your separation comes at the top of the route. Separation does not come off the line. Spacing and timing comes off the line. So when we go here and he's trailing me now, I could do one of two things. I could either work to restack and I could give him like a rocker step move and get space like he does, or maybe this DB plays it well and instead of him trailing, he's hip to hip. What do you think you would do? You would take your right hand and swat him by on his shoulder or on his hip to slip under. But this is you don't get to this point without doing something like a split release. You're just going to end up forcing the release if we don't do it. So let's come back to the top here, right? Like I said, separation doesn't come from the release, timing and spacing does. So what do I mean by spacing? If he's inside shade and let's say he tries to go inside, this DB is going to do whatever possible to not give up the dig. So he's going to reroute you and you're going to end up running this dig 6-7 yards more inside than what you should have, because you didn't take what he gave you and he was giving you the outside release. Separation comes at the top of the route. Now, let's talk about the mechanics of this release. So the mechanics, it's exactly how it sounds. You're literally splitting your feet, but you have to get to a good balanced position and you can't stand up. So you are bringing your back foot up even with your front foot, and your front foot goes out. So let's watch what he does here. So he splits, right? Back foot comes up even, front foot goes out wide. Good pad level position. Base might be a tad wide, but I actually like the base wide when you're in a split release because if this DB does get hands, at least you kind of have some give. The mistake a lot of wide receivers will make is they won't move this foot. They'll bring this foot up and they'll move it barely. And so what ends up happening is that their feet are narrow, their chest is up, and all it takes is one good punch from this DB and you are completely off balance. So we have to split and try to get a read. Now, why do I like this against head-up press? Because you could react either way. Like, we are coming to balance right here. So, like, let's say this DB jumps to the outside. Could you take the inside release? Yes, because you're in a balanced position. You could push off the left, cut out with the right, and go. But you split, DB shades to the inside, okay, fine. I could push off of there and push up vertical right now. That is textbook right there from Justin Jefferson on that split release, and that is exactly how we want to play this thing. So I love the split release, fellas, against head-up press on any given route. Let's watch it again. Great job splitting. Great job taking that release and restacking to give that rocker step on the route. Okay, so next release I want to talk about here is a hesitation hop crossover. So we like this against inside shade 2 to 3 yards off. So inside shade press was when we like that slide and go. This is like inside shade press where he's 2 to 3 yards off. So let's play this full speed and we'll talk about the technique one more time. So he sets him up, gives a crossover, and then he's able to win on that goal line fade. I like the hesitation hop personally only on a fade route, just because I feel like it can take a little bit too long sometimes when you hesitate at a DB. So I don't necessarily like it on routes like a comeback or like, post or a dig. Doesn't mean you can't do it. You just have to quicken. You just have to make sure that you quicken up the tempo of this. So we got inside shade. So the reason why we use this release is we were trying to threaten him where? Trying to threaten him where he doesn't want me to go. If I have a route away from the DB, well, honestly, it really doesn't even necessarily matter where the route's going. If you have inside shade press, you are attacking him and taking the outside release. Take what he gives you, but especially, even furthermore, when it's an outside breaking route or just an outside route like a fade. So we want to attack him, threaten him inside, try to move him off the platform, then go. So we have to close the space with him. So that comes down to the technique of this release. So this Thayer Thomas, wide receiver out of North Carolina State, I believe, watch what he does with his back foot. He steps with the back foot and reaches with the front foot. That is the technique on this hezzy slide, or like this hesitation hop release. You got to push off the back, reach with the right, because that gets you off of your platform and that gets you into the DB's frame. So now when I can go attack him, now it's on us to be able to throw a crossover. So when he throws that crossover, you see how he's actually stepping into his cushion, stepping outside of his frame, head and shoulder fake. That is what we want to do. That is called threatening that DB's leverage. A lot of guys will do this hesitation hop, and they'll try to do this part, but they won't gain any ground. They will stay in the same spot. They'll throw a move. Maybe they get the DB to jump, but you still have to get to the fade. And that DB has a good angle to try to recover on this fade. So we have to make sure we're getting into his cushion by pushing off of that back foot. So let's watch the thing again, full speed one more time. Great job attacking by Thomas. Great job throwing that inside move and then winning on that hesitation hop crossover release. Okay, so now, next release I want to talk about here, this is what we wanted to do against outside shade press. So when we have outside shade press, this is the best release, in my opinion, for outside shade press. Not when he's 2 to 3 yards off. When he's on the line of scrimmage, I don't have a whole lot of space to run, and that is called a wide step release. So let's play this thing full speed. So I'm gonna click play. Wide step, able to take the inside release and is able to run this like post, or it could be a dig, but either way, it's the same type of concept. So let's talk about it. Outside shade. Why is the DB outside shade? He is outside shade to prevent the outside route. So you see where Justin Jefferson's split is on this. So this is when you can expect outside press. As a DB, I'm only going to go outside shade if I'm expecting an outside route and if I have safety help. If I'm expecting an outside route but I don't have safety help, I'm probably not going to go outside shade press, because why would I force him to where I don't have help? It doesn't make any sense. So we line up. He's got a reduced split. Top of the numbers are here. He's even further inside. So DB's smart to line up outside shade. Wide receivers who like to run outside routes from the outside usually cut their split down. So he's smart. But we know that he has help. So if you're running a post route, a lot of people would think, oh, well, I just have outside shade press. I'm just going to go run the post. But the problem with that is he's got a safety over there. So if you just take off and run, he's going to get hands, force you inside, and you're going to go right into the safety. So what he does this wide step. So a wide step is when you step with your back foot and you step wide outside the DB's frame, selling hips and shoulders to threaten that leverage. We're pretty much trying to threaten like a speed release, where you just come off the ball and we're just trying to run outside right now. Because the DB's sole purpose in this is to protect the outside. So we have to threaten him there. We have to threaten him where he doesn't want me to go. So we get him off that platform. You see how we get him to move. Honestly, all we need is a few steps. All we need is one little false step. Maybe he shifts his weight a little bit too much. His base gets a little too wide. He's off balance. That is all we need, fellas. Because now, when I take the inside release, I could work back and get skinny on the route. So I set him up wide, I get skinny on the route, and now I could either lean into him, I can restack. So when I break off on this post, there is a bigger window now between the safety and the DB. I took care of the DB with my release and my top of the route move, so I got a few steps of separation. Now that safety is not right on me. If we just take off and go run and that DB gets hands and forces me way inside, I'm right into the safety and we're screwed. So that is textbook right there from Justin Jefferson. So let's talk about the technique of it. It's pretty much all these releases, fellas, are built off of some kind of prep step or kick step. So when you step with this back foot and you're trying to do this wide step, watch what Jefferson does. You see how he takes that like back kick step? He kick steps behind because that's a way to load your hips. That gives you balance. That is almost like think of it like a trampoline. Like you're jumping off a trampoline. You ever see like gymnasts jump off that like springboard? Think of that prep step as like a springboard. You're springing yourself to throw your hip wide. Because this release only works if he steps here. So many guys will try to do this wide step, and they come from a flat-footed position because their coach, who doesn't know what they're talking about, tells them, oh, you don't want to take that kick step. That's a false step. That's very old school. And I get it. I get it. I understand because you don't want to practice a habit that you may do when you're doing zone, when you're running route against zone. But trust me, fellas, you got to know the difference. When every NFL wide receiver is doing something, you should probably try to add it to your game. You shouldn't be that guy who's like, oh, no, I'm not going to do that. It's like, well, when the best guys in the world all do it, that's when you should think about adding it to your game. Every wide receiver is different. Everybody's built different as just a person. But when everybody's doing something that's working, that's when you should try to add it to your game. So that kick step gives them that balance. And a lot of guys who don't kick step, they will step about this far. They will literally just step there. That is going to do absolutely nothing to this DB. To threaten him with that fade, to get him to jump, you actually have to step outside his frame. Now, everybody's critique is, oh, well, when I step here, I'm going to be off balance because I'm reaching outside my frame. Not if you bring your hip. That is the purpose of the kick step. When you kick behind, it like loads your hips up. So when you throw that step to the outside like we do, the hip, your upper body can go with it. You want to think your body is attached to your foot because now I'm in an explosive position where I could drive out and get up into this route. Let's play this thing again, full speed one more time. So textbook release there. The best release, in my opinion, versus outside shade press is that wide step release. Okay, so now, last two examples here. We're going to be talking about how you guys can run that slant against like a quick like a quick slant against inside shade press, but maybe necessarily not when they're right up on the line, when you got some cushion to deal with here. So let's play this full speed. So this wide receiver goes into this like double tap diamond release. So this is one of my favorite releases to teach. So we have a guy who's inside shade. I love this against inside shade press, 2 to 3 yards off. So what you do is you do maybe like just a simple 1-2. So you would step with the right foot and then step with the left foot. So that's 1 and that's 2. You go 1-2 to threaten his cushion, to threaten his leverage. And then you would go 1, 2, 3, 3 steps on the diamond, get him to jump, and we slip underneath on the slant. That's what you have to do to be able to win on this type of coverage. So that's what this receiver rolls with. He does this 1-2, closes the space, and then he goes 1-2-3. Gets the DB to open up his hips, gets him to think fade, making it look the same as my just regular 1-2 release, and then we could win underneath on this route. So why do we want to take that 1-2? Why wouldn't you? Because I'm sure everybody's heard of a diamond release. A diamond release is what we're going to cover in a second, but like a more advanced variation of it. But everybody, I'm sure, has heard of a diamond release, where you would step 3 times to the outside. So you would take 3 hard steps, 45-degree angle, try to get him to open up. You would go right, left, and then right, breaking off of that foot, running the slant. But there is a gap between the two of you. He is 2 to 3 yards off. So what we have to do is we have to close that gap. Because if you just take those 3 steps, right, left, right, and you go right away, and let's say the DB opens up and runs with you, there's still a pretty big gap between the two of you. So when you try to run the slant, guess what he's going to do? Open up his hips, take a better angle because we didn't make it difficult on him by closing space, and be right there on the ball to make a play on the ball. So what we do is we close the distance. We close the distance with that double tap. So now when I burst up and I take my 3 steps, my right, left, right, I'm actually hip to hip with him. When you are hip to hip with him, you could maybe throw by, you put that hand on his shoulder, put that hand on his hip. But when you break off and you make that change of direction, there's not a big gap. He's not over here to where he could just open up his hips and make a play. We could slip right underneath and get him to be trailing me so I could win on that slant route easily. Now, he took a little too much time at that break point. He reached outside his frame with the cut, which is why he took extra steps. So if you can avoid that, fellas, be quick with that cut, you can get a lot of separation with this double tap diamond release. Just make sure we are closing the distance first and make sure it's a fast pace. If it's a quick slant, this has to be a fast pace. If it's a slower developing slant, you could slow it down a little bit. You could use that slide and diamond. You could use like a hesitation hop into the diamond. But we got to be prepared for different tempos and when I'm a different read on that play. Let's play this thing again, full speed. Great job with that double tap into the diamond and then winning on that slant route. All right, so last example here that I want to go over is going to be a goal line slant versus inside shade. So we are going to be going over something called a peek back diamond release. So I only like this. This is only going to work on the goal line because when you're running a fade midfield, you would never look back this early. So let's play at full speed. So he goes here, comes off the ball, peeks back with those eyes for those 3 steps, and then is able to win on that slant. So like I said, this would only work on the goal line. So like, let's say you're in middle, let's say this is not the goal line, not the red zone. Let's say it's a 50-yard line going out. If you're running a fade, you're not going to be looking back for the ball right away. You're going to probably attack this guy, or some guys won't attack him. They'll just try to run, but you're going to keep your head down because you know that it's probably a deeper fade. It's probably like a vertical, not so much a goal line fade. So you would keep your head down. So peeking back right away on this diamond release really doesn't do anything for you because a smart, intelligent DB is not going to expect a fade ball that quick. So what we do is we do it on the goal line. So he peeks back to the QB while he's taking his 3 steps like we were just talking about. So in this case, it would be left, right, left, and breaking off of that 3rd step. But that peek back with the eyes, DB's eyes were not the most disciplined. He should have been watching those hips. But if we peek back with my eyes, he's trying to make a play on that ball. He's expecting the ball coming, so he's looking to see. So his eyes need to be a little bit lower, but we get those DB's eyes high by peeking back. And that can get me separation and get me to win on the goal line when I have to run a slant versus inside shade. So fellas, we like the peek back diamond in what situation? Inside shade press, or maybe 2 to 3 off, but only on the goal line. Let's play this thing again, full speed one more time. Great job by this wide receiver, peeking back to sell that fade, getting the DB to open up his hips, and winning on that slant. All right, fellas, I really want to thank you for watching. I really appreciate it. If you guys have any questions at all, please don't hesitate to leave those in the comment section below. Always appreciate the feedback. It's always great to hear from you guys as usual. And again, fellas, we are going to be traveling out to 15 more states this offseason for 2-day-long QB and wide receiver training camps. Coming out to San Francisco, Orlando, New Orleans, Charlotte, Dallas, the DMV, St. Louis, Honolulu, Boston, Cleveland, Austin, Seattle, Newark, Denver, and Los Angeles. So check out that very first link below if you're local, fellas. We would love to have you out to one of our camps. I'll see you guys next time.